There was a part of me that didn't want to do this review, but there were intriguing aspects I felt that I wanted to explore and I wanted to talk about. And this movie is The Equalizer. Now I'm going to go right off and tell you that I would not recommend this film. In fact, part of the problem that I had with wanting to do it is I felt people would judge me harshly because I actually saw this film. My uncle sent it, my dad and I watched it. The violence within the movie is quite graphic, and also there is a ton of F-bombs floating around. So yeah, definitely not a kid's flick. There are things, though, that I wanted to talk about. Things that I thought were pretty poignant, some things that my mind wandered to, not so much while I was watching the movie, but upon reflection afterwards. It's actually been probably about a week or so since I saw the movie. Like I said, I didn't plan on doing this because I was thinking, oh yeah, this is where people are like, you watch what? Not a movie exactly up my alley. There were things that I did like. So the basic premise of the story is this, is that we have Denzel Washington's character who basically at the very beginning, you can kind of tell he's former military. He just works at a Home Depot. It's not actual Home Depot, but it's a Home Depot equivalent. And he's helping this guy, Ralphie is his name, trying to become a security guard. And you kind of get this feeling where he cares about other people. He's former military. There's something that he used to do once upon a time. And he always goes to this diner at the same time every single night. And he has trouble sleeping. So you're right there. You're kind of thinking, okay, he kind of maybe had a dark past. Of course, then again, if you're watching this movie, you probably have some sort of idea. You probably saw the previews or something along those lines. The only reason why I bring up this diner is because it's actually important to the story in that there's this girl there who I cannot remember her name right now. But basically, she is a prostitute. For whatever reason, because she always goes there every single night, Denzel Washington's always there every single night, they kind of have a acquaintance, so to speak. Denzel Washington always reads these old classic books, and this is part of a whole thing that something that his wife did with 100 books you should read before you die. And he's doing that too. His wife's dead. He's a widower. Probably should have said that. He's doing that too, kind of in honor of his wife's memory. The girl will oftentimes, and she's pretty much, the actress that plays her is actually 17. She's very young. So she will oftentimes ask what's going on in the book that he's reading. So it kind of has a very slow developing, and there's that intrigue. And then basically what happens is she gets beat up, and that's kind of what sets the whole thing off. But there is one thing that I would like to mention is that when he originally goes to the pimp, essentially, and also that's another thing within the movie, is that dealing with prostitutes and that, just that kind of sort of business and basically the Russian mafia, you're going to get all sorts of ugly thrown at you. So these are all things that you have to consider before you watch this movie, or as you're watching, it's like, okay, do I really want to spend my time watching this? And this is something that I'm going to lead to later on. And this is also part of the reason why I wouldn't recommend it, even though I still, parts of me enjoyed the movie, but I couldn't go in good conscience say, yeah, watch this movie. It's like, no, it's, there's issues. But before everything really gets crazy, before all the bad language starts flying, before all the graphic violence starts going, Denzel Washington, he goes to this girl's pimp and he offers pretty much all the money that he has, which is $9,800 for her freedom. And the pimp says, oh yeah, yeah, that'll be her freedom for 1 month. It's one of those things where he kind of tricks him where they go to shake hands on it and he's like, oh, this is just 1 month. I can still make a bunch of money off of this girl. And so Denzel Washington's kind of dejected, and you see his character, and that's why I bring this up, is that you see him as being like a good guy. And the only reason why I bring this up is because of something that I will be saying later on. You see him as a good guy, and he's trying to do things the right way. It's like, I'll literally buy this girl's freedom. Unfortunately, that doesn't work, and there's a whole scene where he goes to leave the room, and he opens the door like he's going to leave, and then he closes it. And he opens the door, and he closes it. He opens the door, and he closes it. And I think he does it a total of 4 times, it opening and closing the door. So you kind of see this whole mental battle going on, and you kind of get the feeling, okay, this is when things are going to get serious. And it does, and he kills all the guys. Yeah, it's quite graphic. But there is one line where, as the head guy, as he's lying there bleeding out, essentially, Denzel Washington's talking to him, and He said, 30 seconds, your body's going to shut down. And here you are lying on this floor, all because of $9,800. And I thought that line was very, very poignant, and it just shows the evil and corruption of man, where it was kind of like, you had an opportunity to do the right thing. I offered you money for this girl's freedom, but because you are that greedy, because you've become so corrupt, because you've become so evil, even though you didn't know that I had the capability to kill you and all your cronies, because you think you're so high and mighty, because you have been inundated in this evil, you have been inundated in this worldly power, that you literally just died over $9,800. And what does that say about your life? And that's what I really got out of that scene, and that's one of the very powerful and poignant scenes to me. That's one of those things that it just doesn't leave my mind. It's something I think about. I'm a very philosophical person, so it kind of lingers in my mind. It was one of those things that's kind of like, yeah, I want to talk about that at least. So there are those special moments, but the big question with the Equalizer is how much blood and gore, how much profanity do you want to wade through to get to those good bits? And I think this is kind of a commentary upon movie making as a whole, and kind of just some of the stuff that we put in there. Think about it, the violence is very realistic. Like, if this sort of thing happened in real life, it probably would be like this. Of course, that doesn't mean that you want to intentionally subject yourself to it and watch it. And you know what? I'm probably, in all likelihood, never going to watch this movie again. It's just one of those things, yeah, I watched it, but there's just too much bad in it, too much bad stuff in it to warrant looking at it again. There are some good points, some things I can think about, and one of those points is that I know that there are people really like this, like Denzel Washington's character, except his character is that he's formerly retired from the military. And one thing that I've often thought, and mainly because of characters that I've created, although not specifically in sort of like Navy SEALs sort of thing, or special operations or black operations, anything of that nature, but I've had characters where they do terrible things. They go and they kill someone. It's kind of like, can you justify what they do? And I know that there are real people out there, they believe that they're defending our country, and I'm not saying that they aren't defending their country. The most important point is that they believe they are defending our country, whether or not the people over them are actually lying to them and saying, oh, this is protecting our country. There could be an argument made that these jobs, and it's the same thing kind of coming up with waterboarding and torture, and these are questions that as book writers we have to ask ourselves and look through. These jobs are to keep a country safe, to keep a nation safe, to keep a people safe. And we know the ugly truth is that there are people that do this. And me being a Christian, I can't help but go and think, okay, could a person be a Christian and do this? I have a hard time reconciling that, because I think even if it's justified, even though this, you could say the Equalizer is not a revenge flick. He's not really doing it for revenge. He's not really personally wrong, because there are other things too where he takes down two corrupt cops. He just beats them up. He doesn't kill them because the cops are shaking down money from innocent people, protection money. He ultimately goes up against the whole Russian gang because, as it turned out, one thing that Denzel Washington didn't know is he just thought he took out some pimps in a prostitution ring, and this is actually, it's a cell in the Russian mafia on the East Coast. So they have this person who they send to kill him, and it just keeps escalating from there, and the bodies pile up. But it's never really a revenge thing. There is a certain aspect where it appeals to justice, and then, of course, you get that very interesting topic of, well, what truly is just? And being a Christian, you have a different a definition of justice. If the Equalizer, it appeals to our worldly sense of justice, like these people deserve to die. These people deserve to die a gruesome death because of what they do to people. But we know as a Christian that wouldn't be the right way. I mean, if there was some perfect way in which you could get people like that out of this world, it would be to throw them someplace and lock them up and make sure that they would never see the light of day again until they die of natural causes. Or it would be one of those things is that if you could convict them, and then the justice system would take its natural course. But so many times justice is perverted, and people in power are able to get out of things So that's, once again, all these other story ideas. And that's mainly why I brought this up, is because my mind, it's just working. As a writer, I'm thinking about all these things, and I couldn't help it. And I wanted to share that. So it's really more of a discussion rather than a review, because I'm not really going into it. Because like I said, I can't recommend this movie. But there are some very intriguing philosophical questions there. And it's one of those things where I go and I hope and I pray for these people who are in positions like this, in these black ops. I want to live in a world where stuff like this isn't necessary. And unfortunately, stuff like this has always happened, and it will always happen. But it's like, who are fighting for these people's souls? Things are so wrapped up in secrecy that I will never know who these people are, but I can't help but feel moved for them, and I want to pray for them. And it's one of those things where, when they stand before God, whether or not they were a Christian during, or they became a Christian afterwards, and obviously God can forgive anyone of anything. It's one of those things that, in my mind, I think, is necessary to a degree. There's always choices to be made. You can always say no. Something that is considered necessary, and it's one of those cases where, do we allow evil to reign, but how far do we go? I mean, taking another person's life, this is very extreme. Going on the assumption, based upon information that we were given by another person, which it could be fallible. I mean, there's just so many things going on. And that's mainly why I brought this up, is just all the things going on, all the questions in my mind. And I feel like I'm really, really rambling, but maybe I just needed to talk about it a little bit, because I think there are many intriguing things. And that's one thing that I do appreciate the movie, that I appreciate very much from the movie, is that it got me thinking about all these things. These are things that, faced within the movie, that in the real world we're going to have to deal with, or that some people in the real world are going to have to deal with. I don't think I'm ever going to be taking down the mafia and having to kill people and stuff like that. But there are other things too, like, how do we help people in prostitution? How do we help them get out of that system? And how do we, because this is something that really does bother me, how do we take organized crime in a Christian way without going to being something like the Equalizer or like the Punisher from the comics? How do we take down evil in the real world without becoming evil ourselves? And I think these are very interesting questions that need to be answered. And my mind just kind of goes crazy on this stuff. So I hope I didn't sound too crazy. Just kind of spitting some ideas. I realize it's more rambling, not really a review. But this was what was on my mind, so I decided, hey, talk about it. But anyways, give me your thoughts, like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to smile. This is the OutcastWriter, signing off.